let me ask you first to identify yourself,
Okay.
and then tell me how did you get to meet each other?
Um, should I
Yeah,
start?
yeah. Identify yourself, please.
Okay, I am Jose L. CUISIA Jr., former Philippine ambassador to the U.S. and former central bank governor under President Aquino and also under President Fidel Ramos.
So,
Um,
tell me how did you get to
I
meet?
was exposed to him, I guess, when we were asked to brief him during the transition period. No? And that's when I got to meet uh, President-elect, of course, Fidel Ramos. Oh, I'm sorry. No, no, no. I have to correct that because I did actually meet him before that because I was in the I would attend cabinet meetings. I would attend cabinet meetings when it was a joint cabinet ended. I was not a cabinet member. I had the rank of a cabinet member, but I was not a cabinet secretary or a cabinet member. But during NEDA board meetings, because the central bank governor was a member of the
Yes.
NEDA board, I would attend the meetings. And that's when I first, I guess the very first NEDA board meeting that I attended, I was introduced to the cabinet members, and that's when I met President FVR.
He was then
And he was
defense
Secretary of Defense. Yeah. And what impressed me about him was that he would always be the best prepared among the cabinet members.
Oh.
He would make presentations, very impressive presentations, and it just struck us how well prepared he was. He practiced what he preached about complete staff work. You know, the CSW note that he would do on paper, he actually practiced that himself. And it became very evident to us that he would always prepare well. And in the cabinet discussions, he would not speak all the time. I mean, he didn't try to monopolize the discussion, but whenever he spoke, he made a lot of sense. No? And that's why I got very impressed with him. There are some guys who try to monopolize the discussion. Well, he did not do that. He was always very deliberate in his words, and so I started watching him, and I said someday I hope this guy becomes president of the republic because he's so, and I like his reasoning. It's very logical and so on. But I didn't know whether he had
what
any
his plans were at that
to
time.
run. No, I didn't know.
Was it
But
expected?
when he was elected as president, what really impressed me even more was how quickly he learned. He was a fast learner because he didn't have much. He didn't have much background in terms of economics. So we were asked. This was weeks before he assumed the position to brief him on the economy, and so Jess and I, Jess Stanislao, who was going to be the was it Jess? No, I think Ramon del Rosario, myself, Peter Garucho. Yeah, these were people. We met with him because Peter was going to be executive secretary. Ramon was going to be finance secretary.
Yeah.
And I would continue as central bank because he asked me to stay on. So we would brief him, and he was very diligent in taking notes. But what impressed was he was a very quick learner. He understood, and whenever he didn't understand, he would not hesitate to ask questions. So we had very good, I guess, discussions with him.
Was this because maybe because he was a military man, or was it just really?
Well, I guess he has the discipline because of the military man. He listens when people talk. He does not interrupt, etc. But he has a very, I guess, very quick mind, very analytical mind too. So he would, he would understand uh, words like inflation. When at that time, what we explained to him what inflation was all about, and
Yes, sir.
he would learn very quickly. You know? And we would explain why we would have to take, for example, monetary policy. What was the purpose of monetary policy? And we would explain that. What are the differences between monetary policy, fiscal policy, and so on, things like that.
Tell me the perceptions of the business community at the time he won.
Well, they were, of course, concerned that being a military man, they didn't know whether he would be pro-business, whether he would... but the fact that when he chose Peter, when he chose Ramon, that was very reassuring to the business community because they were known factors and they had been very active in the business sector. Ramon, of course, and Peter were involved in the campaign. Ramon was, I think, in the finance group, and
Yes.
Peter was overall campaign chairman.
campaign.
And both of them were well-known figures in the business community. So that was, I think, a big plus because the people who were... NEDA was, I think it was...
Shell. Habito.
No, Shell, yeah, Shell.
Shell.
Because the other guy was also from UP, but that was during the time of Cory. What's his name? The guy from Cagayan, and I forget his name right now. He passed away, I think, a few years ago. Yeah. But so they didn't know whether he would be sympathetic to the business sector in terms of coming up. But in a short time, they realized that he was really determined to push for economic growth, for the economy to do much better, and to address the problem of poverty.
He knew who to pick, and who to surround himself with.
He had very good people, right?
And that inspired a certain level of trust and confidence.
And when he started giving talks, etc., it became quite clear that he was willing to support business. He got, of course, Ramon stayed on for just about 11 months. Then Bobby De Ocampo took over. He was also a well-known factor in the business community. So they were quite comfortable. And, during his time, the economy did quite well. That's one of the things that he is given credit for.
But when he came in, it wasn't quite that good.
No, because remember there was a problem in terms of the energy situation, and the fact that he really focused on getting energy or electricity back within 18 months. That was a very big accomplishment.
Again,
of course, he was criticized for it because he said that some of these were very expensive. But his reasoning was that, if you want availability, we need to do this quickly. And that's going to cost us more because we're trying to provide the electricity as early as possible. So he solved that problem within 18 months.
The engineer and,
remember,
the manager
during the time of Cory, there were so many attempted coups.
Yeah.
It was not true in his case, so there was no such problem during his administration. Of course, because he came from the military, the military looked up to him as their own. So they were quite supportive of him.
And he knew how to connect with them.
Yes, he knew how to connect with them. Right.
So, sick man of Asia, give me a general picture of financial, monetary position of the Philippines just before he came in.
Well, when I guess the most difficult time was during the time of Jobo Fernandez, because that's when we had hyperinflation. Interest rates were as high as 40+%. Inflation was over 50%. Really ridiculous. And Jobo Fernandez used to say, well, I don't want to come back our currency to be like this. He brought back a Argentinian 1 million note, which is hardly worth anything, not even, I think, $10. I don't want our currency to be like this, Argentinian. No, big currency. And so well, remember, Jobo took over central bank from Jimmy Laya during the worst time. This is right after the assassination of Ninoy Aquino. So there's capital flight, inflation was so huge, and so on. The central bank practically had no reserves, actually negative reserves, when he took over at something like $400 million negative. So it was a tough job for Jobo. But at the end of his term in 1990, when things were much better, although it's still bad. When I took over the reserves of the central bank, 1.6 billion. Today it's what, 77 billion. So you can imagine what it was like. But when he took over, there was all this problem. But the shortage of energy was the biggest problem at the time. Yeah. But we were slowly regaining the confidence of the international market. When I assumed the governorship, we were already in the process of restructuring our debt. Actually, even during the time of Jobo, I was part of the team that was created by President Cory to help him negotiate with the foreign creditors, because we had over 300 foreign creditors.
Yes.
And the first tranche of the debt restructuring was completed 1991. Jobo was still I was already Jobo had already stepped down. So I was together with Jess Stanislao. So that was 99. The second tranche, I think we did around 11 billion. No, I think the first tranche was small, about 4 billion.
Okay.
The second tranche was about 11 billion, 1992. Once we completed the second tranche, we were able to restructure our debts.
Yes.
We got some new money. We got extension of debt obligations. That gave us a breathing spell. And we were then able to, that's why during the time of President FVR, we had a stronger economy, although it was not as strong as in the later years, particularly 96, 97, when the economy was growing at 6-7%.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
At that point, we were still in the maybe 2-3% growth rate, so still quite slow. But we were able to get back into the international capital markets with the completion of the second tranche. That signaled our re-entry into the international capital markets.
The mainstream.
So, of course, President Cory was very happy. And then, of course, he was the beneficiary. President Ram, when he took over, we could already borrow money, although at that time, not very big amounts yet. Until I think a few years later, when the economy was doing much better, growing at 6-7%. Yeah.
You already touched on it earlier when we were starting. The reform of the central banking system. The rationale behind that. We were wallowing in debt.
And you know what happens is that when the central bank has a huge burden, which we had before the new BSP came out, we have to sterilize that money because it is inflationary. Because we have to borrow, we of course inject more money into the system, and then this is why it had to be, in effect, transferred to the national government so that it would not impact the monetary system. And that was how I explained it to Congress and to Raul Rocco, who was the sponsor of the BSP bill. He immediately understood. It took me much more time with the congressman to explain this, because they kept saying, why should the government take the losses of the central bank? So he, I guess, mandated the central bank, Jimmy Laya, the governor, to absorb all those losses.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
And that's why it became a huge burden on the central bank until that was finally settled when we transferred the huge debts of the central bank to the national government.
But there was difficulty getting it passed during the Aquino administration.
Yes.
But you got a shot in the arm actually from FBR
Yes.
when he
Because
pushed it, right?
President Corey did not want to deal directly with the politicians, which he was very good at. In other words, when he put up LEDAC, that was the forum to discuss urgent bills. And this bill always came up. He said, I need you guys to support Governor CUISIA to pass this bill, because then the central bank can do its job. Okay? So that's why I said I always give him credit for that, because I would not have been able to do it on my own. I spent a lot of time in Congress, both the House and the Senate. Well, in the House, it was more Feberin, who was then the secretary of the Monetary Board, who's also a lawyer.
Right.
She became SEC commissioner. But it was Feberin and Deputy Governor Reggie Regalado, who spent a lot of time individually with congressmen who wanted more explanations. I spent more time with Raul Rocco because I knew that he would be the one shepherding the bill in the Senate.
In the Senate. And then FBR, I guess, doing his part, mustering the political
Yeah, he talked to the, of course, the Speaker, the Senate President,
leadership.
and then, of course, the members of the Banking Committee. He was very effective in that regard.
and did not fail to raise it up every time you had the LEDAC,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Oh, oh.
I would always, sir, please don't forget, take up the bill, creating the BSB. So it took us, June 30. He came in June 30, 1992.
Right.
Exactly by July 3rd. So June 15, 1993, it was passed. Then they came out with a 15-day publication when it's passed, 15-day. July 3rd was the start of the new BSP. That's when I also formally stepped down.
What's the worst that could have happened if we did not get that crucial
We
reform?
would not be where we are today in terms of the BSP. Have been, and I don't know, it would have had a very negative impact on the economy. That's why
Even
I'm
on
told
growth.
by the IMF. The IMF said there are only 2 countries in the world which were successful in passing law, creating new
Central
monetary authority, and Philippines one. The other one was a small, I think, African nation. That's why they gave credit. They gave us credit for that. They said that's amazing because it says it is a very tough political question. I mean, political matter that because when you have the government absorbing the debts, it's very difficult for the politicians to understand that and to accept it. But we did. We managed to get it done. The IMF was very happy when that happened.
Okay. But it wasn't just that, that FBR set his sights on. I mean, he literally opened the economy, liberalizing broad areas.
Privatization was one of the key, I think, messages of the FBR administration, opening up of the economy. Remember, the PLDT was opened up. And it was, I guess, during his time that we saw a lot more privatizations of government assets, and opening up the economy, competition, encouraging foreign investors to come in. Because he was very active also in going these business trips.
Right.
He would bring a business delegation to go to the U.S., to Europe, etc. He was very active, and he liked doing that.
You retired from public service shortly after the new Bangko Sentral Act was passed.
Yeah, I had to step down. Automatically, my term was shortened.
Because of the...
it was effective. I assured Senator Rocco that I was not angling for to be reappointed, so I could come up with what I felt were really very good amendments or very good additions to the law. For example, uh, in the old central bank, there were always 4 cabinet members. So 2 private sector and the governor. When you have a structure like that, you don't have an independent central bank. Why? The 4 cabinet secretary can outvote
Oh, yeah.
the 2 private sector and the governor. They would always win out. So if the national government wanted to borrow money from the central bank, even if it was not for the good interests of the country, they could do it. Of course, it didn't happen, but there was always that risk. We changed that in the BSP law. There's only 1 cabinet, and the rest are private sector representatives. Of course, they came from the banking sector and from academia. UP of a number of monetary board members like Philip Medalla, who was also NEDA Director General. So that's one example. Second, we of course improved their salaries because the governor was earning at that time during my time 35,000 all in. It was the salary grade of an assistant manager in a bank.
Yeah.
Okay, all in. We raised it to 180,000. So when Gabi took over, big increase in the governor's pay. And the monetary board members to 120,000. Now, of course, eventually during Erap's time, he raised Paeng Buenaventura to 10 million, something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we also improved the quality of the staff because we were able to pay higher salaries for examiners, and supervisors and so on. So that's the CB was the first, or the BFP was the first government institution that got out of the salary standardization. Then
Yes.
all the others followed suit.
Yes.
They followed suit. That way, we were able to get very good quality people into the central bank, into the BSP.
If I remember Raul Rocco also saying the salary should be above and beyond the level of corruption.
Yes. So, in fact, in the center, I have to say, very, very little. I'm not saying zero, because there was, even during my time. And I tried to catch those people who were involved in corruption. But even after that, there's been very little. When you look at the surveys of the Makati Bisca, the BSP has always been among the top.
Very strong
Because
confidence.
they're looked at as professionals, less corruption, and so on.
You mentioned one particular tool that FBR used with such finesse and savvy during his administration, the LEDA, Legislative, Executive, Development and Advisory Council.
LEDA. That was very effective.
That was a terrific management tool. I mean,
Yes.
not just, I suppose the first one was the emergency powers.
Yes.
And then the second one was for the BSP law. But he used that for most every other. No.
Because he had okay. Why did they like coming to Malacanang? Because they would get a lot of the publicity from the reporters covering Malacanang.
Yeah.
They'll have pictures, etc., etc. So those who were planning to run for it, they loved it. So that's why it was effective. And FBR knew that. So he would, okay, you come, you want something from me, you come during the LEDAC, we'll discuss it. But I also want something from you. Get these bills passed. So he knew how to use his office.
Agenda setting and making roadmap.
Right. Whereas Cory didn't like that because she didn't want to deal with certain politicians.
Averse to the politics.
Yeah.
So FBR had a certain savvy to it.
Yeah, very.
Savoir-faire.
Yeah, magaling siya sa ganun. Yeah.
Okay. You moved on to the private sector, so you were now on the other side of.
One of the things I should tell you, one thing, like he would do, and it was, I knew, deliberate. He would call meetings at 6 a.m. in the morning.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And then, but some guys, wow. I said, I had to go, I don't remember where I was living, but I had to get up early to be, I'd be on time. But that was because of his military. He would be up by 4:30, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we would have 6 o'clock. But it was also to drive home. In other words, we had to discipline ourselves. We were not used to that. People who, like Ramon is not a morning person, but so tough, but we had to adjust. Peter, the same thing. Peter Garucho, no? But it was to drive home. Fortunately, in my case, I was already really getting up early, but not as early as having a meeting at 6. So
6. Oh.
then we would leave sometimes for the provinces. Ask me to join. We have to take 5 o'clock in the morning. So you see, can you imagine? You have to wake up,
Oh, yeah.
go to the Villamor, and take flights. But to me, it was a good message that we had to discipline ourselves, and we had to know how to manage our time properly.
So, shape up or ship out?
Sorry?
Shape up or ship out?
Yeah. Those who didn't want to go.
Diba?
Yeah.
If you can't,
So
can't keep up with
to
that.
me, as I said, I enjoyed working with him because I knew he also worked very hard. He himself worked, and of course, he was very demanding on us, but it also brought out the best from us. Yeah.
And he wasn't going to ask his people to do.
But he was not prepared to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. You moved on to the business community.
Yeah.
The other side. Perceptions. I mean, given all these financial,
Yeah.
breaking up monopoly.
Yeah.
Initially, there was some resistance, no?
Oh, yeah.
Especially those who had interest. But
Yeah.
tell me about that and how it changed.
Well, I'll give you one example. When I brought in our CEO, Hank Greenberg of AIG, at that time, AIG was already one of the biggest life insurance companies in the world. And they were supposed to have a 20-minute meeting, first meeting of Mr. Greenberg. They started talking about the war in Korea because they were both Korean veterans, etc. We lasted 1.5 hours.
Oh my.
And of course, all the other appointments had to be
moved.
But at the end, he said, my boss says, Joy, I like your president. It gives me a lot of confidence, and I'm going to invest in this country of yours. So, one of the first investments in infrastructure, the Skyway, AIG put up an infrastructure fund, and they were the biggest investor in that Skyway, which we're now benefiting from. But AIG put in $75 million in that. This was Chitra, an Indonesian company. But that was also because they had the World Bank, IFC, supporting this project. So Greenberg felt confident. He made that bet. They lost a lot of money, by the way, but I think 50% of them, because politics came in. They did not give the increase in rates that they required to be able to be viable. But it was the kind of confidence that was engendered because of that personal relationships that they had. He felt very comfortable with President Ram. And he said, okay, I'm going to make a bet. And there were others that they also supported. There were other projects in the Philippines.
FVR was pretty much that kind of a fellow, no? He finds an entry point, where he can make a connection.
Yes, correct. And so the business sector felt very comfortable with him. It was only during the time when he was pushing charter change that the business sector did not support him.
Tama, doon na lang,
Yes.
Otherwise,
I was among those who did not support him. Ramon also. Even though he served, we were trying to talk him out of it, that he should not push it. And of course we eventually he backed off. I mean, he did not push through, but he was really determined to push the charter change.
Yeah. Yeah.
His own reasons. He had his own reasons for that. But we felt at that point it was not the right thing to do. So the business sector. That's the only time I remember that he did not get the support of the business sector. But throughout, also because the economy did well during his term.
Yeah.
90, especially started taking off 95, 96, 97, up to 98 his last year.
We had our supposedly our coming out party at during the APEC summit of
correct. 1996 APEC. So those are among the best years of the Philippine economy.
But tell me also, sir, you were part of a few business delegations that accompanied him, no?
Because I was CEO of PhilamLife, and they would all say, "Oh, bring Philip," because we were one of the biggest investors, long-term investors in the Philippines, because we had long-term money, so we could invest in projects, and that's why that Skyway. It was not just AIG. We also put in money about PhilamLife. I think $10 million, in addition to the 75 million of the AIG infrastructure fund.
But tell me, share with us some insights. What FBR was like as the Philippines, what he would call the Philippines #1 salesman. during this state and working.
Literally he was really a fantastic marketing man. He would always, of course, focus on all the good points of the Philippines. And to be honest, there were of course some weak points, but he did not deny it. But he knew that what he would focus on are the positive points. He would not, but whenever they brought out the weak, yes, he would admit it. So he would, hindi siya bolero na, okay, no, there's no problem, there are no problem. No, he says, yes, we do have, but we're working on those weaknesses, but these are our good points. And so he was such a good marketing guy, and they loved to hear him. Actually, when he started giving talk, he was not very effective, but he also learned. I guess he went through some practice, etc., until he became a much better speaker. But so originally he was not a good speaker.
Stale?
He was boring,
Okay.
So then I guess he got coaching, and he became. After a while, we were surprised. Wow, this is not the FVR that used to speak before.
So when he came in,
then he's
fresh.
all these stuck there, throw away the paper. And he has sheaf of paper. My speech writers wrote, I don't want it, throws it, then talks extempore. He would do that many times.
A bit of showmanship as well.
Yeah, showmanship and so on. So he would also crack jokes, and so he became a more lively speaker.
And he studied his audience pretty well.
Yes.
I mean, an American audience would be different from a European.
He would always come, right. He would have appropriate jokes, depending on the audience.
Which reminds me of your initial observation that he would come to a meeting, to the cabinet meetings, the most prepared.
Yes, that was very true.
So tell me about APEC. Weren't you part of some advisory council or?
No, I was not. I was always with the business.
Or ABAC.
Yeah, ABAC. That's the APEC Business Advisory Council.
Yeah.
But the people there were also from the private sector. I don't know who the members were at that time, during the time of FVR. But when we had the APEC in Manila, 1996, he was, of course, a very gracious host. People were very happy the way he handled the foreign, the state leaders and so on. And I think his comments were very well prepared. I mean, as the chairman of the meeting, because it's the host country that chairs the meetings. He did very well, and obviously he prepared for it. No, and of course, they really went all out in terms of showing the beauty of the Philippines, the talent of the Filipinos, the singing, etc., etc. It was a very successful APEC. 1990. That's the time that Bill Clinton came.
Yeah.
Remember, they had these villas built for
the
that
APEC, the
in
APEC
Subic.
villas.
No? Yeah.
What was,
But I was not involved in any
okay.
like committee or anything because I was no longer in government at that time. But Philam was still we were one of those who supported.
Yes.
You know,
What
in
was-
terms of funding and so on.
What was the euphoria like?
It was remember, that's the time that the Philippine economy was at its best. I mean, we were growing, I think, about 7.6%.
Yeah.
At that time, 1996, 97. So obviously, there was so much interest in the Philippines, and this is why also I think, practically all the heads of state were here for the meeting. I don't know of any major leader who did not come.
No, I think they
For
were
that
all in.
1996
But-
APEC.
But for the business organization and business sector, you were representing, or you
I was
were
part of it.
you
I
know.
was part of it. I was not.
yeah.
I was not because the business sector. Well, at that time, I'm trying to recall who was the. I think the Makati business chair was still Enrique Sobel. Yeah. I'm not sure now, but MAP. I was president of the MAP in 1985. That was right before Cory took office. I don't remember who the president was, but the business community was very supportive of all the government programs for APEC.
How did it change the confidence of the local business organizations and
Well,
community, given
clearly, the confidence was much higher than during the time of President Cory. The business community was very appreciative that Cory restored democracy, but in terms of economic achievements, we did not have that many too because of the problems we were facing. Very high inflation, very high interest rates. We did not have sufficient reserves. We could only we could not borrow until we were able to restructure in 99. So from 86 to 92, we could not borrow from the international market.
And
So-
we had coups left and right.
Sorry?
We had
Yeah,
coups left.
exactly. So there was, whatever confidence there was snapped out because of those coup attempts. There's 7 coup attempts. So there was
Change.
really some problem.
But it changed, no?
Yes,
FBR's time.
of course. Wala na nga coup attempts. And of course, what he was also doing was reaching out to the military. He knew how to handle them.
And creating, I guess, the environment where,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
trade.
Particularly for the business,
investment.
because he really wanted to open up the economy, wanted the foreign investors to come in.
Let me get your comment on, well, I mean, the macro side of it was, you know, trade and investment liberalization
Yeah.
and facilitation. But FBR actually inserted, if you remember that, economic technical cooperation, especially for MSMEs.
Yeah,
Macro and he didn't want to leave the little guy
yeah.
behind as
Yes,
well. ano?
correct.
Oh.
He clearly, it was during his time that started micro and small and medium scale MSMEs. Put more focus on them. But it took some time for that particular sector to be able to get access to credit. Not even during his time was he be able to do that. It took maybe up to the time of Arroyo na.
Yeah. Someone had
When
to
there were
start it. ano?
some credit facilities
Yeah.
made available to them. Not even during the time of Arab, and Arab was focusing on the poor, but
You mentioned already there was just one particular activity that the business community was not supportive of,
Yes.
and this was the People's Initiative
yung charter.
and PIRMA, the charter change. Why was that? I mean, was there basis to? Was there a perception
The fear was always that, okay, he has done very well, but we don't want another dictatorship. I mean, even though he has done well for us, who knows? He might just stay on and on and on. Do we want that? I says no. It was that fear that a dictatorship may again be reestablished.
But the perception also was that 6 years was too short for
Yes.
a good man.
No, correct. And that's where parang sayang, but still, despite that, it says, are we willing to take the risk of his staying longer, much longer? Many people said no.
And yeah, you said that you,
Ramon,
Secretary Mon,
Peter, even
yeah,
people who were very supportive of him
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
I think, despite the fact he has done well, we don't want to take that kind of a risk.
But he eventually backed out. No?
I eventually
He backed off that rally.
I guess he
with
saw
Cory
the mood of the people also. Yeah.
Tell me about the perceptions of the business community with the impending win of Joseph Estrada.
Well, we were of course very worried about that, and we felt that he was not prepared for the presidency. It's just that he was very popular, being a movie actor, etc. So we were quite concerned about his winning and all. But it was very clear that he was going to be the next president.
Yeah.
You know.
So aside from time, what was lacking? Where could have FBR, focused more? Where could he have done better, you think?
Maybe, well, in the preparation of a successor who could have challenged Arab. I think he backed Ramon Mitra, Monching Mitra.
No, he ran against Monching Mitra.
Monching.
Jodivi.
Mitra. Huh?
Jodivi.
Jodivi.
He endorsed
Jodivi.
Speaker De Venecia.
But we said that was a wrong choice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who would you guys have chosen?
We were actually more personally, myself, Ramon, we were more for De Villa.
Talaga.
Renato De Villa, who was also very close to FBR, but I guess because Joe really wanted it, and he had worked for so long, I think Rene De Villa did not want it as much as Joe De Venecia. But Rene De Villa was quite reluctant, but we thought he would be a better president.
Yun yung mga historical what-ifs, ano?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Tell me what the interactions are like now between you and FBR. You drop by, you see each other often,
Yeah,
frequently.
we have, because he lives also in Ayala, Alabang.
Oh, okay.
We have the same doctor.
Neighbors.
We had the breakfast just the other day. The other night we had dinner because it was the birthday of Dr. Makalintal Canlas, his doctor, and also our doctor. My wife's doctor,
okay.
Husband, Dr. Canlas, is my doctor.
Oh, okay.
Manny
Okay.
Canlas.
Okay.
Also his doctor. So we said get to see each other. I always attend his birthday celebration.
What about the international community? I mean, I do notice
He
once
continues
ever
to
so.
enjoy the respect of the international because they know what he has done. They know he's been an upright president. So he in my view, he continues to enjoy very high regard in the international
Is
community.
his advice still sought out?
Well, he is part of that Bao forum for a long time, so I'm sure he still gets invited to some of those events. Although he can't travel as much anymore.
Yes, yes. I understand.
Yeah.
What is your? You have a favorite FBR moment, or your most memorable FBR moment when you finally said goodbye to public service? Or
I'm trying to recall. Yeah. Favorite FBR. How would I put it?
or what do you want? What do you tell people of your state?
One is I had a very good working relationship with him.
Okay.
I always say there was only one time he called me,
Okay.
and it was to warn me that a politician was going to use his relationship with the FBR to ask something from me. And he said, don't listen to him. That's it. So he never interfered in my running the central bank. He never tried to get anything from me. Although one time he was asking, Joey, pwede bang yung central bank bumili ng presidential plane? Sabi ko, mahirap po yun kasi it's not in the charter of the central bank. Because I knew he had an old plane.
Yeah.
And he wanted to get a newer plane. So sabi ko, and at that time, our funds were really very, I mean, during my time, unlike today, the 76 billion. By the time I left, the reserves of the Senate were about 6.7.
Yes. Yes.
When I assumed it was 1.6. But still, that's very, very small. I mean, compared to the central banks around us. We were not, in effect, we were not a rich central bank. So I had to tell him, I have to explain to him, sir, kasi ganito to. Yeah. I will be questioned by Congress, especially the
Right.
opposition.
Right.
Why did I buy a president? So hindi niya tinuloy. Hindi niya. He said, maybe you can get DBP or PNB or one of the other government, because that's part of the executive. Yung central bank is supposed to be independent.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and he understood it. He did not take it against me. So those were.
Where do we stand now, actually? Your own sense of
As far as what?
central banking.
The central bank is, because I think Governor Tatanco did such a great job in his 12 years. It enjoys very high respect within the region. Central bank has been one of the best performing central banks in the world. You know? In fact, Tatanco got a number of awards because of that. It's viewed as a very professional organization. People have done very well within the central bank. So it's not just Governor Spanilla, Deputy Governor Diwa Gunigundo is very highly respected. And you have other deputy governors who are also very much respected. So the central bank continues to enjoy the respect of the international community.
Well, let me get back to your FBR moment.
Yeah.
Is there something that
I'm
you can
trying to
recall now?
remember. I know there must be something, you know, that that stands out. No? But it's not coming to mind now. Yeah.
What could be, to your mind, FBR's greatest legacy as president? From where you stood.
I think his move to privatize as many of the government-owned assets as possible and opening up the economy was a very, I would say, a very dramatic accomplishment because that signaled precisely the entry of foreign investment into the country.
Despite all the pain, you know,
Yeah,
this
despite.
pain,
Remember,
controversy.
PLDT was, you know, owned by the Cojuangcos. It was like a family-owned business. And when he opened up, that's when the group of First Pacific, Anthony Salim and Manny Pangilinan came in, took a big minority position. Eventually, they, of course, became majority, but they started off with a minority position. Then FVR opened up, and pretty soon, there are others who also invested in PLDT. I think that also sparked the growth of the economy under FVR because he was open to competition, privatization, and then of course he solved the electricity. That was probably another major accomplishment, solving the electricity shortage of electricity within 18 months, which is quite an achievement.
Turn the lights on, literally.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm done. Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Sure. If I
Maraming
remember
salamat.
a FBR moment, I give you
Sure,
that.
we'll just take a few working shots and then a group
Yeah.
photo.
Sure.
Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.